Hey, good morning, church. Welcome to this edition of Checking In with Pastor Jim. It is Saturday, July the 11th, 2020, and as you can see, I'm in Jerusalem. Actually, no, I'm not in Jerusalem, but I have been to Jerusalem, and I wanted to talk to you today about travel. Yeah, because it's July. It's that time when I usually travel, and I am not going to be able to travel this July, at least not internationally. I think I'm going to get away for a couple of days, just, you know, a few miles from here. But I love to travel, and July is often the time when I travel to other places. I want to tell you how all that got started. I was in my very first French class back in high school on like the first day, and I remember opening up that textbook, and there was a little dialogue there. Maybe you've seen these, but it was like, Bonjour Guy, bonjour Michel, ça va? Oui, ça va bien. Et toi? I remember seeing that, and something just came alive inside me. I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to live in France for like a year until I can speak French fluently. That's what I want to do. I don't know where that came from, except that I had grown up mostly in West Virginia on a little hillside in Boone County where we didn't have a lot of travel options. But that seemed so exotic to me, so wonderful. The language seemed so beautiful. I wanted to do that. I didn't get to do that right away. It was only in 1994, when I was in my early 30s, that I got to travel internationally. It was a trip to the Holy Land, and it was with my friend Jim Easton, a Methodist pastor in town. He got this some kind of deal, a familiarization tour, he said, for pastors who might want to go to the Holy Land and then come back and bring people from their church later. It was a really good price for that trip, and so I scraped up the money and I went. It was 7 days total, and as we said later, we ran where Jesus walked. But I loved it, and can I tell you this, on the way to Israel, we were on this airplane, the 747, and at one point we were flying over France. And I remember I was standing up, I was looking out the window, and thinking, I just want to parachute down from here. That's France down there. I want to go down and live there for a year and learn to speak French. Well, we got to Israel, and on that first trip, we looked at everything, saw all the sights. It was incredibly moving to be there on a spiritual level. But on this other level, it was just exciting to travel in a new place, to hear these other languages and taste different foods and see what I had never seen before. While we were on the tour bus going down along the Dead Sea toward Masada, this representative from the company that had sponsored the tour said, you pastors, if you do go home and invite some of your congregation to join you for your next trip, if you get 5 paying passengers to come along, you travel for free. That seemed incredible to me. And I wanted to know, are we taking advantage of our church members? He said, no, we have to have somebody anyway on the trip to work with them. We would pay you to do this, but instead we'd like to give you some travel credits. I said, yes, right away. And it felt like this door was opening to international travel. So I came back to the Holy Land a couple of years later with 42 people from my church, and we loved it and built up some travel credits. I was able to go to Greece the year after that to do the journeys of Paul, and I took my wife Christy with me, and she loved that. So along the way, we just developed this love for travel, and we've learned that it's worth it to us to save up some money, that experiences are more valuable to us than things, right? So instead of filling our house with fancy furniture or driving expensive cars or wearing Rolex watches, we try to save our money for travel. Let me see how I'm doing on time here. Oh yeah, just 5 minutes. So I wanted to tell you this. And it kind of relates to where we are right now. My daughter, Catherine, and my daughter, Ellie, they both have inherited from their parents this love for travel. Catherine decided that she wanted to pursue a master's degree in Scotland and got accepted at the University of Aberdeen in northern Scotland. And so she was going to spend a year in Scotland. I was so jealous. I kept thinking back to that childhood dream of spending a year in France, really learning the language and the culture. Anyway, you know what we do. All of us live vicariously through our children. So I thought, good, Catherine, you go to Scotland for a year and tell me all about it. Well, this was her experience, at least as I understand it. When she first got there, everything was wonderful and new and different. People were speaking Scottish all around her, which is almost a different language when you're in Aberdeen. You have to really strain to understand the English words that are in there. But there was that, and then shopping was different, and how she did her laundry, and where she bought her groceries, and what her classes. Everything was new and different, and she was loving it. But if you've ever done this, you get to a point where you are not loving it anymore, when it just seems hard, right? Like, why can't these people speak American? And why won't they take my money? And why is it so hard to shop for groceries? You get to the point where you're just kind of finished with all the wonders of living in a new place. And you begin to miss your old place. You begin to feel really, really homesick. I think Catherine did for a while there, even though she is very brave and was being very brave about her experience. Eventually, she got to that third stage. And I think this is common for people who live abroad. In that third stage, it wasn't wonderful, it wasn't terrible, it was normal. It was just the way it was in Aberdeen. She was just used to it by then. So here's how I think that parallels what we're going through during this global pandemic. Do you remember back around March the 11th when the World Health Organization said this is a global pandemic and the number of new cases in Virginia was doubling almost every day, and we were terrified, right? Like, this terrible disease, COVID-19, is going to kill us all. And so we went home and we shut our front doors and we locked down tight. And it was terrible. And then, after a while, we began to get to the place where it almost felt normal. Maybe you know what I'm talking about. Maybe it has felt almost normal to you some days. For example, Christy and I have been ordering our groceries from the grocery store for the last nearly 4 months. We don't go into the grocery store to shop. We just go online and fill in our list, and somebody bags all that up and brings it out to the curb. So Christy hasn't been in a grocery store. I haven't been in a store in a long time. But it feels kind of normal now. We go pick up the groceries, we bring them home, we wipe them down, we put them on the shelves. And yes, the produce doesn't look like the kind of produce you would pick out yourself, but okay, it's carrots, it's kale, it'll do. Anyway, kind of normal. I don't know if we'll ever get to that place where it feels wonderful, except I think this might be true. If we ever get back to the old normal, it will feel wonderful, right? Christy did go into Lowe's this past week. She was just picking up a sprinkler head for Ellie's front yard. And she said, to go into a store, to be able to walk around and look at things and pick up what you thought you might need and take it to the register and check, that was so wonderful. She said, I got homesick for the experience of shopping. Isn't that something to think, okay, the old normal could feel wonderful at a certain stage. I don't know what your experience has been like, but I just thought it was fascinating to compare this that we're going through with what Catherine went through in Aberdeen. She got to that place where what was first wonderful and then terrible began to feel like normal. For us, I think we're going through what felt terrible and now feels almost normal. Well, one day, when we get back to the old normal, it's going to feel wonderful. When we get to go back to church on Sunday morning, can you imagine that? Just get in your car, drive to church, park on Monument Avenue and walk right in and say hello to your old friends, to hug them and shake their hands, to go to Sunday school, to come to church, and then maybe afterward go home and take your Sunday afternoon nap, just like you always did back in the old days. That would be wonderful, wouldn't it? So here's the thing. When we get back to normal and it feels wonderful, I want you to remember that. I want you to take a picture of it and hang it on your wall and say, this is me shopping at the grocery store without a mask and gloves. This is me picking up a few items at Lowe's. It's wonderful, wonderful. So often we just take for granted what we have in our lives. We think it will always be that way and nothing's ever going to change. Maybe the kind of disruption we're going through just helps us appreciate at a whole new level what we all have always had. And maybe if we ever get back there again, we will appreciate it more than ever. Friends, we are in new territory right now. We're in a whole different country in some ways. We are in the country of the coronavirus. We are in the country of social unrest. And we are so hopeful that someday things will be normal again. Until then, let's keep on saying our prayers, keep on loving one another, keep on going deep in our love for God and wide in our love for neighbor, and praying for the time when we will come through this and stand on the other side and say, isn't everything normal again? Yes. And isn't everything wonderful? Yes. I hope you have a completely normal day today, friends. See you for coffee and donuts at 8 o'clock in the morning or at church, 8:30 or 11 o'clock. Until then, bye to you. Shalom.